Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Tuesday. This week we are looking at references to God's grace throughout the Bible. And the Apostle Paul tells in his own testimony in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he speaks about this thorn in the flesh that he is facing, something that had given him trouble throughout his life and his ministry. So Paul says in 2 Corinthians 12:8, "For this thing I besought the Lord thrice," or three times, "that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for you. For my strength is actually made perfect in your weakness." So Paul says, "Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." You know, for these first two prayers, it seems like God was silent. He didn't really answer him. Almost like the prayers of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. "Father, if there's any way in your will, let this cup pass from me." But it wasn't God's will to do so. So now God answers his request in this third prayer by saying, "It's all right, Paul. My grace is sufficient for you." You see, God is implying here, he realizes what Paul is going through. He knows the trials he's facing. He knows all about this thorn in the flesh. But he said, "Don't worry, my grace is sufficient to help you endure." You know, after a little time living for Christ and facing Satan and knowing all the troubles that we face, we begin to realize that there is a measure of God's grace for every measure of trial that we face. God doesn't tell Paul here, "Tough it up. Come on, suck it up, man. Quit your whining." No, what God actually tells him in this passage is that I have grace that is enough to help you. The Spirit will help you and comfort you. The Spirit will give you strength to help you overcome all these obstacles in your life. You know, I saw a beautiful sunset the other day. One of the amazing things about it was how it was peeking through the clouds. It was almost like the clouds enhanced the glory of the sunset. And I wonder sometimes if clouds don't enhance the glory of God in our lives and make them even more beautiful, perhaps, whenever we see what God is doing. So Paul says, "I will rather glory in my infirmities. I will take pleasure in these things because I appreciate feeling God's hand upon me." He claims that the ultimate blessing in all of these trials is the fact that the power of Christ rests upon him. You know, if we never face a trial or a temptation, we will never realize the power of God in our lives. And I realize there are some people that say, "Well, I can endure. I'm a pretty tough guy. I can overcome these problems all by myself." But you don't want to do that because we'll miss the power of God resting on our lives. And Paul says in this passage, "I will rather glory in my infirmities, in my struggles, in this thorn that I'm facing here, so that the power of God may rest upon me, and his strength will be made perfect in all of my weaknesses." I hope that we look for that today in God's grace on our lives.